Good afternoon, everyone. Today I have with me Aman Kumar, who's the country head for Bulgari here in India. We've got Ratnesh, who's the CX strategy head for India and the GTM lead for India. Sarvagya, who leads marketing for Oracle CX, and Divya Pratap Mehta, me, who's going to moderate the discussion. The topic of the discussion is the future of marketing and challenges for now. Aman, we'll start with you a little bit. Just take us through a little bit about your career and your journey and some
Sure.
marketing challenges that you faced as you've gone through this journey, and then we'll take this discussion forward.
Okay. Thanks, Divya. It's great to be here. I think I started basically, I was always a bit of a rebellious child. I did many different things. I think in undergrad, I decided to do filmmaking. I think that's what I was really looking to do because I dreamt of becoming a director in Bollywood. That didn't quite, well, and somewhere down the track, I went into marketing and I got fascinated by the idea of marketing. Following that, I worked in a family business where we were essentially producing cashmere products, and I traveled across the world, selling to all sorts of exotic locations, selling our products to different stores, high-end retailers and stores across the world. And I think after 10 years of doing that, I decided I needed a change. So I went ahead and did an MBA. And following that, I was very fortunate to have been offered an opportunity with LVMH where they asked me to manage one of their brands, Bulgari in India. I think in terms of the journey that we faced in India, specifically for Bulgari, is that India is a very culturally specific market. And I think that when we divide that down further, India is also very diverse. So what culturally means the way North Indian culture, the way North Indian culture is very different to South Indian culture. Each region has its own nuances. Uh, and I and I think one of the and that of course was one of the challenges. The second challenge, of course, was is that this is a highly dispersed market. Our customer base, if we look at the number of millionaires by net worth in India, barely 25% of those are actually residing in Delhi and Mumbai, which is, and if we take the top 8 cities, they account for 40% of our customer base. So if we really take that further, we've got 60% of our customer base scattered across countries. And that's one of the reasons why has been the impediments to our growth, because we could not really rely on a traditional brick and mortar owned distribution model, because our cost structures could never sustain that, because there isn't enough meat or volume in a specific city or in a specific region. So that has been one of our key challenges, of course. And then, of course, the specificity of the market, because it is very different. Our KCPs, our key consumption periods are different. Even if we take something like Indian weddings, it is so specific. And the challenge, of course, is to see how we stay locally, how we become locally relevant, while at the same time maintaining our differentiation, which is our brand DNA and our brand equity. And that's always the tightrope and these are the tightrope. That's the tightrope we always look to walk.
Wow, those are some interesting challenges, and I'm sure with COVID and mass digitization, you would have you would be looking at things very differently in that
Absolutely.
sense.
I think
Uh,
for us, the biggest sort of eye opener for us was to really see the potential of tier two and tier three India. I think that we always knew at the back of our minds that this customer base existed, but we never really figured out how to actively engage with them. It was very reactive. They would come to our stores, they would contact us. And I think that that's where, one of my reporting manager actually once posed the question saying, hey, listen, it's good that you're having this, that they're contacting you, but what are we doing to reach that audience? How are we doing that? We need to invert that. And I think that really set us rolling. And I think that to us, one of the biggest surprises with online assisted selling or virtual selling and virtual prospecting has been just the realization that today customers are very willing to purchase virtually without a touch and feel experience. It's not a non-negotiable, particularly at our price points, which is which we never believed ourselves till we actually went into it, and we ourselves were shocked. And that's just opened up a whole different dimension of growth for us.
Ratnesh, I'll come to you a bit. Just take us a little bit through your journey and some challenges that you faced through your journey as in your career, and we'll go back to Aman and ask him some questions and some interesting things that he's talked about, especially from a luxury marketing point of view, and reaching out to tier 2, tier 3 India.
So compared to one, I think mine is very straightforward and boring. Engineering. Then went into my MBA in marketing straight after that, but still didn't leave the fondness towards IT. So dabbled a bit around here, but yeah, primarily stayed in the area of IT always. But yeah, I did moved around a bit. So, I started in pre-sales, then I went into sales, then I went a bit into delivery. And then obviously I, grew up. Fortunately, being in IT, it gave me that platform to move around, being driving the whole IT wave. So, spent few years in US, traveled across in Europe, worked a lot in Asia Pacific. So that, and then came back to, as I said, India became the holy grail. So, came back and finally settled in. I still obviously report my reporting structures into APAC. So, I work, my team is an APAC distributed team. So we work across diverse markets as developed as ANZs or almost see similarly dynamic markets in ASEAN, countries like Vietnam, Philippines are very, very similar structures as ours and all that. I think the passion has been more towards, as I said, I always like to be in front of customers, solving, customer problems, trying to understand their business. So I can't say I've master of all industries, but yeah, primarily worked a lot in consumer goods and retail to start with. And then when India was exploding on automobile, fortunately, I was there. I've spent a lot of time working in automobile industry, some marquee brands when they're coming into India and when they started their journeys, I was there. So I have some good stories or insights on how they grew up, the challenges, and it's always challenging, right. Last April, I remember there was a zero sale of any automobile, in this country, a country of 1.2 billion, zero sales across the entire country, right? So they have their own challenges and all that. So it's always been, I think, as Aman also said, it's very, very dynamic. It challenges keep coming up, right? So pandemic, I think, just is one, but there's always regulatory challenges, finding the niche customers. I worked a few luxury brands during my journey. Very recently, being one of the luxury automobiles and not one of the big threes, German. So they're a bit late in the market, trying to settle in. And then when we working through with them, realized in India, and I mean what you said, so much of that echoes in terms of personalization, reach, cost structures, very, very personalized expectations of the customer. They're going through that whole thought process on how to establish and catch up with the three big threes, German. So I think, but fortunately, it's a company which believes, I think, not in short term. I think they're here to stay. So they probably are going to stay put and build and continue, on this strategy with the thought through of a 3 or a 4 year plan. Pandemic, I think, may have just slowed down things a bit, but I believe, I think they're very quite believe in, I think, how they would want to establish their brand. So yeah, that's, I think, very briefly about me.
Fantastic.
Aman, coming back to you, one, as you mentioned very clearly, and I'm completely aware of it as well, India is undoubtedly an extremely diverse market.
Yeah.
The fact that, in terms of size, in terms of diversity, in terms of various regions, etc., like cultural, there is a certain complexity to the Indian market. It's not as homogeneous as most markets are. Probably the most heterogeneous market in the world, literally, I always tell people. On top of that, now we've got COVID, which is like the icing on the cake in some way. And then on top of that, luxury marketing per se is by itself a far more complex game, because you end up talking to smaller numbers, and one needs to be far more connected to the consumer or the customer. So in that context, what do you think are the future challenges for marketing and marketeers, and how do you think are you guys coping up with it in these times?
I think firstly, I mean, for us, I mean, I'm not a digital expert by any means. I don't come from a digital background. I think we've literally reacted to a situation that was in front of us with COVID, where we suddenly saw that, we couldn't rely on a traditional traffic-based, we couldn't rely on traditional traffic-based prospecting. We couldn't do events. We couldn't do all the traditional things we were doing. So really speaking, I mean, for us, it was really about digital prospecting. And of course, we went through the standard ways we do that, which is whether it's social media or whether it's SEM ads, whether it's display advertising. We've tried all those mediums. And I think the key part of it, of course, is the quality and the ability to target, because I think that that's where there are major limitations. I think that, particularly when we go into luxury, when we look at data issues like data capture in India, I mean, the customer journey in itself is so fragmented. We very often, their privacy issues, etc. And I think those are some of the challenges we are facing. The challenge I do, and we've just, and while we've learned to deal with it, we've figured out what works for us. We figured out the issues that I see are twofold. One is granularity in targeting, because I think there's still a very long way to go in India for that. Very often when we target on through traditional mediums, like on social media or social media particularly, I think there's a lot more that we need to do. There's a lot more that we need to understand about our consumer, because very often we can't use set variables. I mean, of course, there's the first layer, which is targeting by interest, but then that isn't really exploiting that full potential. And in terms of productivity of those and the ROAS, of course, it's compromised. The second aspect, of course, is the fact that we're moving towards a cookieless world, and we've got first. And that means that we'll have to focus more on content development, creating engaging content. And the second part of it, which is the biggest part, is first-party data, the first-party data level. And I think that is really the next future, where we really need to see how we can maximize that. There are many interesting tools. There are many tools that we globally are exploring. I think this is something that we're facing this is not something that's specific to India, it's global. Whether it's using artificial intelligence to evaluate customer clumpiness and all those aspects. But I think that's really where it's better insights, better first-party data insights. That's really where the future of growth is. How do we target them better? How do we respond better? So yeah.
Ratnesh, you're in some ways a data expert, as well as someone who actually has a lot of insights from various clients on what Aman's talked about in terms of getting high quality data, hyper personalization. How is that possible? How do you use AI and predictive models, which is one of your favorite areas as well? Would you like to elaborate a bit on that? Like how would from a future perspective, technology help us in actually, and especially in the luxury marketing zone, where customization becomes far more important and personalization.
And our data sets are not very large compared to many other industries.
Yeah, somewhere it's actually more about the quality of data and managing it rather than the size of data. So exactly. In that context, like what do you think are the future challenges, as well as future ways of actually creating a more high quality data world for such companies?
Yeah. So see, I'll break down this whole thing into two parts. One is, as you said, the unknowns, right? Which is there is a set of customers which we don't know about, right? And we want to acquire them, and they have to be the right set of customers. You can't splash it around, right? There's a brand value. You can't be sending 10,000 emails to everyone, right? Who is not a right associated value or a brand, right customer profile for you or whatever. So how do you get to do that? And I think there is cookieless world and all that, but I think there are signals, and I think this is all about signals, because what is also happening from the customer side is that while we are as brands are also trying to go towards digital pandemic, I think the customers are also trying to do the same, right? There is a bit of a research, and there is a bit of things which they're doing. Obviously, there are things like influencers marketing, and there is content, like Aman just mentioned, and then there's always a branding and a celebrity that we just started that conversations around that. So I think the first part is definitely, getting these signals and making a right meaning out of it. Okay, go to those appropriate data sets. I think right now, earlier it was a bit of a problem, but I think we gradually in India we're getting good data sets now. Let's say for a luxury segment, right? So the signals may not be associated directly with, let's say, a clothing or a fashion or
Yeah.
whatever. Like I'm
Yeah.
just giving example. A customers who's probably, let's say, searching for uh, an Alaskan cruise, right?
Yeah.
Is a right profile for you, right? Now
Exactly.
it's very two dissociated things, right? But that signal for is a right unknown profile which you need to probably target,
Absolutely. We're
right?
competing for the same share of wallet.
Yeah, it's the same share of the wallet. So it
And
is
the
no
attention
longer
span.
now targeting only, let's say, from the
Yeah.
fashion or whatever perspective. You need to probably mine it further. The second part, I think, which is important is the moment the customer starts your engagement. And I think that's where I think the next challenge is how personalized you can be. You need to know three things more about the customer, because every interaction needs to have a value, right? You need to bring value to the engagement. You need to bring certain wow thing, even if it's a simple email or a brochure being sent across. And it is no longer sales or service. Any organizational touch point is happening, and it can be even a digital touch point. As I said, it could be an email or whatever which is going across. It should show that you know the profile, you know the customer well, you know some things which the customer will say, wow, this brand knows me, or trying, making, at least making an effort to know me. So that, I think, and that cannot be broken. That journey continues. Even when you acquire the customer, the relationship continues, because obviously, that's a bold marketing, right? That an acquired customer and a resale and sending cross sell is more easier than trying to acquire a new customer. And the lifetime value of the customer engagement, because they also become your brand ambassadors in a way, right?
Of course.
The customer advocacy about them speaking at five different places is
Promoters.
so
Yes.
important, right? So that journey is somewhere, I think, today brands, and it's not easy, very honestly, to you have that what they've sold, what they spoke, what they've written on social media, what do they know more, what do you know more about them. It's very difficult to get more things about them, right?
Yeah.
But that's, I suppose, the channel. And as I said, every part of your organization needs to be on the same page, right? Nobody can call that customer and say, oh, I didn't know that, right? That statement cannot happen, right? So uh, which means that all your platform finally has to be on the same, whether it's
Yeah.
marketing, whether it's communication, whether somebody has on service side of the thing, they've called with a problem, it has to be on the same platform. So that's where I think, and then you need to start getting using these technologies, right? For example, you need to know this customer probably is more comfortable on an app, all right? I'm just going a very digital kind of a thing. This customer is not comfortable on messages, right? This customer likes to probably likes physical mailer even in this world kind of a thing, right? Preferences, right, of interaction, preferences on communications and all that. And that's where I think that touch on personalization starts. And technology does allows you that, right? Now, as I was telling somebody, now there are technologies which can tell somebody that Ratnesh Mehra actually opens his personal mails only between 10 p.m. and 11 p.m. on an iPad, because there are ways to find that out, right? And if you send him a message at 4 p.m., obviously he's in office mail. By the time he opens, it will be on page 3 of his Yahoo and Gmail and gone. He wouldn't even read about it. So that's the level of now, where technology is working to make sure, and he prefers user a email over, let's say, a WhatsApp message or an app message or whatever, right? So that's the level I think luxury customers want. They want brands to know. They want to be empathy based. They want to have a, a wow moment. And that's what I think suppose the challenge is today for brands to give that experience to the customer.
Absolutely. I mean, I completely agree. And I think that, we completely are sold. And I think as a company, we are completely on the same page. That's what we're striving to do. And I think to some degree, we've made quite a few, we have made quite a few, sort of leaps on this front. But I think always, of course, the challenge is how to make it consistent, the experience across touch points, because we have a prospect who's acquired digitally, and the customer journey, of course, is definitely not homogeneous. There's some that want a very automated experience where they just go self-serve. There's some that want a virtual personalized journey. There's some, of course, that want to come into the store. Now, the difference is how do we sort of create that consistency across the touch points, which is what we strive, which is what we work with, what we, of course, are mandated to do. But then there's always a scope of improvement because the touch points increase and the journeys are becoming more, and the
Yeah,
customer
yeah.
journey itself is so non-linear today that achieving that consistency across the touch points is really what keeps us up at night. And that's what we keep striving to do, to get that incremental consistency.
So
Because we
Aman, like,
There's a word for that. I mean, there is the terminology which is now called as phygital in India,
Yes,
right?
absolutely. We're all about digital.
It's just
I think
phygital now, no digital. It is physical and digital, which you
absolutely.
know.
And I think that's really where we are looking to see how we can strive and how we can integrate these experiences. Because ultimately, I think, very often in many companies, we view omni-channel and brick and mortar retail as separate. When I think that true omni-channel is when all of those touch points are integrated, because and I think that that's where the organization, of course, and then of course to implement that there's several issues. There's one is of course from a strategic standpoint, but then on the ground at an operational standpoint, how do we see that that happens? And there and that's basically what we, of course, that's what keeps us going, that's what keeps us busy.
so Aman, in that context, I know that, two big challenges in terms of for most marketers today is while trying to get hyper personalized at the same time trying to maintain, especially in the luxury category, non-intrusiveness, data
Yes.
privacy, and the other side of it is, while everybody wants to get omni-channel and still have a certain centralized data view, how do you really achieve it? And what are the things that you are doing and what are the things you should start doing and also stop doing in that context?
Okay. I think from a personalization standpoint, I think at LVMH, we of course value, data privacy. It's first and foremost. So we are of course bound by GDPR rules. So we will of course only contact people who are where we have a marketing authorization, which we secure. So I think for us, it's a non-negotiable. We absolutely stick to that. In terms of personalization, I think that there's also a certain level of personalization at beyond which it's sort of, where is the incremental revenue growth? I mean, to what level do we need to personalize till we get there? And I think as one of the things that I've seen, and as we're moving towards a cookieless world, is we're saying that we're going to move away from a one-to-one approach and we're going to go back to a cluster approach to see what's optimal in terms of that level of personalization and targeting.
Right.
So these definitely are areas. I think that one of the areas that we need to basically work on is customers often contact us on multiple touch points. And I think that it is important for us to link those to link that. I think that's where there's always a dissonance. When someone, let's say, calls an omni-channel call center or calls the store, how do we ensure that consistency? How do we avoid that duplication? I think that is what we are really looking to see how we can mitigate, how we can manage that, and how we can make that experience truly seamless.
Ratnesh, you have some tricks in the bag on that. Those are exactly the kind of problems that you solve on a more ongoing.
Of course, there's a centralized database, but very often it happens in real time. So how do we automate that? How do we make it more seamless?
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, I think there are tools which today I think capture the intent. As I said, I was explaining also about like channel preferences, but I think the need of the hour is somewhere to today. I think one is to react very quickly. I think today,
Yeah.
when somebody is let's say on any of your digital assets or talking to somebody, I think those you can't call them back after 3 days, 4 days, and said, okay, you left a message and whatever, right? So
No.
so today, because every lead is important, right? End of the day, you made so much effort, you spent so much on marketing, and you brought them to your digital asset,
And
let's say, to your website.
there's so much competing for that, for the
Yeah, yeah,
attention space. It's so
yeah.
fragmented.
Right. So I think that is definitely there, and then you start giving them experiences. Uh, uh, I think the other thing which we have seen here is that it's not marketing now only, right? Or it's not sales or it's service. We were seeing a common platform, because customer, as you said, the journey is has to be seamless. It's the same customer and it's you as a brand. So we are seeing a very merged sales and marketing, because also what we have seen is the journey is not like consumer good purchase. You go in Amazon, purchase it, and you're out, right? And there also that you have things like you left it in cart and all that. You need to nurture the relationship, which means it's not always a first time purchase, which means there is always an intent, or and then awareness, and then there is a nurturing, there's information, and then there is a kind of a relationship sales which happen over certain interactions. How do you nurture it, right? As I said, and then there are platforms which can help you nurture that relationships, which means what I'm saying is there's always a good journey, and there would be a wow customer who comes in, does this, and it becomes a customer. Answer is no. There are people who will come in, show intent, go away. The people who will come, engage, then go away. The people, but that doesn't mean that they are not interested. It's just
No,
you
of
don't
course.
know the signal, right? But you need to bring and nurture them back, increase, go back and find out why they left. And there are tools which tells you the intent. So it tells you what did they came in, what did they browse, how much time did they spend, was there any specific product where they were spending more time. That data gives you is nothing but unless you act on it. So which means these are insights. Then you need to take that insights and put them back into your marketing engine, and use them, right? Whether it could be a small offer, it could be a related, in more informations, it could be an offer to ask them to visit somewhere, or invite them to like-minded events, which are, as I said, very similar nature for luxury clientele, right? And all that. So which set you want to, you call them for a derby, or you call them for a new luxury car inauguration. Those intent and signals tells you all those things. So it's possible. It's just that you have to connect the dots now more
Absolutely.
seamlessly.
Absolutely. Which is precisely what we, I guess, are always looking to do. We're seeing how we can do that. I think the key point for us, of course, is to see the quality of the data and the consistency in the capture as well. And I think that's where we're working towards, seeing how we can do that better. How do we get those insights, particularly from a store browsing visit, which is offline? How do we integrate that? How do we capture that data in a more automated way than what we currently do?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Sure.
Also, one of my other favorite questions, Aman, is that while we guys are going through all these challenges, and there's a lot of new data, a lot of new technology, a lot of omni-channel integration that we're trying to do, and definitely like LVMH when it comes to luxury marketing, and trying to therefore go more hyper personalized. You guys would be far ahead of the curve than a lot of other consumer companies. But what do you think are the things that people were doing traditionally, which they should stop doing, which is equally important from a perspective of overcoming challenges for being future ready?
I think one is that, of course, having an integrated distribution channel. I think having this very siloed distribution view is, I think, something that we all need to move away from. I think we have to integrate all our channels. We have to be able to deliver that consistency and be able to optimize it, because, as I said, the customer journey is becoming increasingly non-linear. So that means that, not viewing omni-channel as a department, but viewing that holistically in the context of the whole organization. That is, I think, first and foremost, internally, what companies can do, because I think once that view comes in, that's when there will be that's when we'll really start seeing those solutions coming up. Because look, every solution, every business is different. Every ultimately today, even digital, if you look at digital marketing, it's very consumer centric. I think in every industry, in every brand, that journey will be different. And I think that, it's about customer centricity, is about getting granularity is achieved through customer centricity. But first and foremost, of course, yes, I think we need to move away from that silo approach, which I think in many consumer industries still prevails, because in many companies, we still view omni-channel as a separate division from the traditional. And I think that is the approach that needs to change. Versus them competing with one another, we need to really exploit those synergies.
Right. Interesting.
And that, of course, entails a lot of organizational, there are a lot of organizational, the internal organizational changes, etc. that, that need to be, those bridges need to be crossed for that.
Sure, absolutely. Very interesting. Like, we've actually had a similar discussion with an auto player where we talked about, a single vehicle number centricity versus a customer centricity. Like, Ratnesh, would you like to build a bit on that, on customer centricity, like what Aman is talking about, and how could a luxury marketer actually bring it to life?
So I think there are two aspects. One, I think I mentioned about is the organization, which is how organizational structures are now evolving, and the fact that today customer centricity is not an IT department or a marketing department's function, right? It is, or a call center, large banks or something. You will hear a head of customer experience is nothing but who manages all the call centers for the bank. Sorry, pun intended, but I know there's still some banks in India where you asked the head of customer experience, and he's actually managing the 5 call centers of the company, of that bank. It is a CEO's mandate today, right? It is actually how some of the brands will grow and become leaders or exhibit leadership compared to the next set of followers, right? And organizations have proved that who have embraced this whole customer centricity earlier have leapfrogged, and it is right up to shareholder value, right, in terms of the valuations, in terms of how brand is perceived versus the next set of brands. So the innovators, the leaders have actually embraced customer experience, and that has come in because it's now being driven from C levels, and it is no longer, as I said, the next set of functions. The second is people, which is it has to evolve in every employees, or at least the customer touch points. So everybody needs to embrace, which means, yes, you need a set of everybody, whether it's sales, service, marketing, you are on the same customer experience platform. So it's a matrix organization in a way. You do whatever function, but it's everything is revolves around customer centricity. And third is processes, right? So you develop processes, and technology will help. Technology is today not a deterrent today. So the technology enables you to create those processes of enablement, empowerment, at lowest associate levels, because it's no fun when a third level highest guy tells you and says, customer, yes, we will do it for you. It is when that first interaction happens, and that how empowered that person is by the organization to take that call in terms of customer centricity is where I think experiences matter, right?
Absolutely.
Right. So I think, and it's all possible. I'm just giving an example. Yesterday, I just picked up some stuff from a portal, and there was a quality issue. It took them some 3 levels of calls to finally tell me that, yes, finally, yeah, your refund is approved. But at the end of the day, I lost my, I think,
Absolutely.
affinity towards them, right?
Yes.
It would, they had to take 2 levels of approval to get that approval done because there was an exception. It is as simple as an empowerment. They should have understood that I'm probably one of the very high lifetime value customer. I buy like crazy from that portal. So I think that's just what I'm saying. Empowerment and employees is important. Processes are important, and it has to be led at a senior management, probably CEO level.
Absolutely. I mean, I just think, coming back to your example, if I look at it, I think one of the challenges is probably either the salesperson, the representative you interacted with was not, either they were not empowered, or it could be that they were just lacking the data. They didn't check the data. They didn't see your LTV value to
Yes.
know how it had to be dealt with. And I think that one of the things is, of course, that the data visibility across the organization, and also one is, of course, getting the people on board with it. And the other is, of course, having that data visibility, which is so critical.
Absolutely. So especially like you mentioned, when we are now moving, let's say, to, trying to solve the geographical problem in this country and going to tier 2 cities, tier 3 cities, it is very important because a place like Kochi or Ludhiana or the next prosperous or whatever affluent clusters in this country, they expect the same treatment, right? And there, the next set of people will not go back and say, "I'll go back to Delhi or I'll go back to
No,
Mumbai," and I'll tell you then whether this is possible or can I do this
not
customization.
at all. And I think as brands, we can't afford to have them wait, because otherwise we can lose them to other. There are many other nice products. There are many nice brands out there. We are in a world where we all have to compete. And the critical thing is, of course, to respond immediately to
Sure.
the speed of
Yeah,
the response and to convert.
Aman,
Or
can you tell us a little bit about some initiatives that you're taking in terms of customer centricity and a unified customer experience? What are the things that you're doing, and any roadblocks at the moment, which could be interesting for us to learn and understand as well?
Well, I think that in terms of LB, I mean, I think at Bulgari, we've always been very customer centric. I think right from, it's very ingrained in our culture, because even I think before digital came into being, I think it is something that was very ingrained, where every process that we had was in the store. I think in our stores, the teams work very closely with, of course, the teams in the store are very much involved in the omni-channel process. They very much, they've been trained to deal with virtual selling in our company. Everyone is trained in remote selling. We offer, we offer an assisted customer journey online. We don't, as of now. And it's something that's that's a very close collaboration between the so-called omni-channel teams and the retail, the teams in the store. And I think that's basically a collaboration that's worked very well for us. And yes, I think that's basically one of the key things that keeps us going. I think in terms of what we plan to do, yes, we are looking at basically ways in which we can leverage deep learning or artificial or AI to see how we can enhance those measures. We're looking at ways at how we can capture the insights in a more automated and in a more consistent manner. I think that's really the areas that we're still exploring as a company.
Right. And any closing notes that you'd like to leave us behind from a perspective of, what do you think, especially when it comes to, high-end retail and luxury marketing, 3 things people should definitely, focus on to be future ready?
Okay. I think firstly, embrace omni-channel. I think view all channels holistically and seeing how you can create that create a funnel which can address the maximum address all kinds of demands and customer needs. The second, of course, is I think there are 2 rather that I'd like to stick to. The second, of course, is to be customer centric, to be as granular as you can, to get the to understand the customers better and to work within that. I think that when we work and we empathize with clients, and that's really the tenet of design thinking, that is really when we come up with the best solutions. We really come up with the solutions with this technology, as Ratnesh said, technology and all that is there, but I think it's really about understanding the consumer, understanding the consumer behavior, understanding the different needs of different buckets or segments of customer, and being able to personalize the journey as much as we can across all the different touch points.
Great. Ratnesh,
or virtual.
Ratnesh, any closing notes on your behalf? And also, like, especially from an AI perspective and a more, ongoing data perspective, and, any views, because I know you're an expert in that area. So like, how would you, leave some thoughts behind for Aman to think about as well?
Yeah. So I think I just reiterated, I said this things about, and I think Aman just kind of reinforced about, one platform, one customer view. And I also been saying, the technology today is actually enabling these, and this is all about catching the right signals and providing value in terms of every interaction. So, when you say AI is very, techie word, but if you put it into this, I spoke one example about channel preferences, right? It could be even product recommendations. It could be in, uh, identifying clusters of prospects and said this could be the right potential of customers whom I want, right? When we talk about modeling, lookalike modelings, right, where AI helps and goes and finds the set of customers you want to acquire, right? Out of that whole world of universe, AI helps in that. It passes and it looks at the set of behavioral attributes, because in this market, behavioral attributes, I think, supersede the transactional value attributes of our customers, right? Sometimes the customers behavioral attributes will tell you where the customer is heading, or customer is in his or her journey, or his demographic profiles probably, or uh, things which will tell you that this is a good prospect to go after, and this is a good customer to acquire. After that, I think it's plain simple marketing. I think, you acquire a customer, you give them wow experiences, you innovate, and then you make sure that you manage their customer experience very well. I think that's how it works.
All right, guys, with that, thank you so much for your time. We had a very stimulating discussion.